Here's how you can tell if your plants need to be repotted from a houseplant professional. The most common sign would be roots growing out of the bottom of the pot. This is a clear sign the plant actually needs more room to grow. I decided to actually combine two of the same plant, so I want to make sure that I change out the soil completely. I'll be using Market Botany's aeroid mix for both of these plants. The pot I'm using is an 8-inch 3D printed pot from Tactile, which has the perfect amount of space for these two plants. And here you go. Now you have a happily repotted plant. Make sure to drop any other repotting or plant-related questions in the comments, and have a great day.
Hydrogen peroxide is something that I always keep on hand as someone that has over 100 houseplants. You mix a 1:5 ratio of hydrogen peroxide to water, and then you can spray it or water your plants with it. Chemically, it's oxygen heavy, so it encourages root growth and healthy plants and propagations. And the oxygen helps combat against root rot if you've overwatered your plants. It fights against bacteria, mold, and it helps kill fungus gnat eggs. Listen, my audio sucks, but that hissing noise, it's the sound of the eggs and other organic material breaking down.
Concerning.
It's amazingly helpful, readily available, and super cheap too. Not sponsored, but I wish. Follow for more plant stuff. Bye!
Hey everyone, it's Lou, and today I'm going to do a video on tips that I wish someone had given me when I was a beginner plant parent. So my first tip is to do your research. What I mean by this is that you need to look up the individual care needs of each plant that you own, because it's going to be different for each one. I think a lot of people don't own plants because they once were gifted one, they didn't look up the care instructions and it died, so they were discouraged from going to get more plants. Second tip is that when you bring a new plant home, you should quarantine it for probably around 2 weeks, because you don't know the condition of the nursery that you brought your plant from. It could have a lot of pests, and you could bring pests back to your home and infect the rest of your plants. And my last tip is to only repot your plants when they absolutely need to be repotted. For example, I am only repotting her because she is obviously too big for her pot. And when you do repot, only repot an extra 2 inches bigger than what it is in. So I will be going to a 4-inch pot.
Welcome back to Plant of the Week. It is time to talk about my favorite plants of all time. Here's how to take care of your philodendrons. There are tons of different types, but this care covers most of them. I keep most of my philodendrons in medium indirect light. I keep some in bright indirect light, but make sure you keep those guys out of direct sun or they're gonna get crispy. I also like to wait till they dry out about halfway between watering. I stick my finger in the soil. If the top couple inches are dry, she's ready for water. Make sure you give them a thorough water till it's coming out the drainage holes. These guys also love some added humidity, so I like to keep them in the shower, mist them, or put them near a humidifier. Welcome back to What the Fuck is Wrong with My Plants. Let's talk about yellow and brown leaves from over and under watering. The main difference is that one is squishy and one is crispy. This is a squishy yellow leaf from overwatering. Overwatering leaves can also look like squishy brown or squishy black. And then this crispy yellow-brown leaf is from underwatering. Crispy usually means she needs more moisture. Perfectly healthy plants can also have a yellow or brown leaf from time to time, and just remember that when that leaf turns yellow or brown, she's not going to go back green, so you can go ahead and give her the snip.
Let's talk about Monsteracare. This is Monstera 101. They like slightly acidic, wall-draining soil. I use a few different types. For example, this Adansini propagation is in sphagnum moss. This mother Adansini is in a combination of peat, perlite, sand, and some worm castings. My Albo is in a combination of orchid bark, sphagnum moss, sand, peat, and perlite. You want to water when the soil is almost completely dry. Don't oversaturate. The more light they get, the more you will need to water, especially if they're in a terracotta pot. Bright indirect light. Don't give it any direct. It'll burn. This guy is thriving because he's receiving filtered sunlight through my patio screen. Don't forget to give it some support. It's a vining plant, it's gonna grow up. Literally, you can make anything work. We know these guys are low light tolerant, but if you give it more bright light, it'll grow big and strong.
It's time to repot. Fully root bound. Picking the proper pot is essential. You want room to grow, but not too much. You want about 1.5 inches bigger than the old pot. Don't be afraid to break some roots, it's part of the process. But to be safe, I'm cutting the bottom out of this nursery pot to save as many roots as possible. Gently break up the soil, and I'm doing a full repot here. Distilled water, prop drops, and a splash of hydrogen peroxide for my root drench. I'll let that soak for up to 2 days. There's my marbles. On a chunky, well-draining soil, with about 2 inches in the bottom of your pot. I gradually drop the roots in and add soil to make sure it gets in between every root. You want it to support the plant, but don't compact it. And I like to brush off any debris off the leaves. Now for its first heavy water in its new pot. Water the soil evenly. A quick neem oil shower, and when it's dry, place it in bright indirect light.
Panic. Okay, when an orchid bloom dies off, a hormone starts going from the tip of the stalk all the way down to the base. And normally, this would kill off the entire stalk. So you have a couple of options. One, you can trace it all the way down, and you can just take a nice clean pair of pruners and chop it off, okay? And with proper care, it will rebloom. Now the second option is actually my favorite, and this is what I typically do. I'm gonna try to interrupt that hormone from killing off the entire bloom stalk. So what I'll do is trim where it's still green between the nodes. We've got a node right here and a node right here. Wherever a bloom was is where a node was. And again, with my clean pruners, I just give it a little cut. And you have a chance of getting a branch off of there with more orchid blooms. Typically, orchids will rebloom 2 to 3 times a year with proper care.
OMG, I checked my Maranta's roots and look what I found. These are called tubers. They house extra nutrients to help with new growth. So cool.
Plant lovers, this is for you. This moisture meter tells you how much moisture you have in your soil so you never under or overwater. Insert in the soil to get your reading. It also comes with a watering guide.
You want to know why your carnivorous plant needs to have rain or distilled water? This is why. Its roots. If a plant's carnivorous, it is for a reason. They grow in nutrient-poor soils, which is why they evolved to eat their insects. That's how they get their nutrients. Now, because the soil is so nutrient-poor in their natural habitats, their roots aren't that great at absorbing them. Actually, if you put fertilizer on their roots, you will burn them. And no roots, no plant. That's also why you want a carnivore-safe pot. Nothing terracotta, nothing metal. You don't want to use any old soil with them either. And you never want to use Miracle-Gro. They have fertilizer and nutrients in them. When in doubt, put them in plain sphagnum. You could also use perlite, vermiculite, peat. Don't let these plants scare you. They're actually really easy.
Here are my must-haves for soil mixing. Organize. My favorite substrate is chunky bark. The chunkier the better for drainage. Next up is perlite for drainage. Cocoa coir, because it's not soil. 1:1 premix. Oh, and charcoal. And this is my favorite thing to add to soil because of pests. I'm going to adjust my premix for this gorgeous variegated tetrasperma that I found. First, I'm gonna add a bunch of nice chunky bark. I don't really measure, sorry guys, I just kind of eyeball it. And some scoops of perlite. Wear a mask. Do you see all that dust particles? That'll get stuck in your lungs. Available to you, add some Leica for some extra aeration. And some charcoal, cause it's good and it looks cool. Shh, this is the good part. I'll be adding the systemic bonite to the top layer so that every time I water from the top, the roots will take in some of that to kill the pests. I hope that was helpful. Please ignore my faces. I thought maybe I would need more time to explain things.
You bought all this leca, now how do you use it? This stuff is dusty, so you do have to prep it before you put your plants in it. I don't believe in soaking it, but you do want to rinse it off really, really well. And if you can, try to do it outdoors, otherwise over time, the sediments in the leca might clog up your sink.
Rinse.
You want to use hot water, rinse until it runs clear, and then do it all over again.
Boil.
The boiling sanitizes it and removes extra dust particles, after which just rinse it again and then let it cool down. I know it looks exactly the same, but this is so important, especially if this is a brand new bag of leca and your plants are gonna thank you for it.
You'll notice that the money trees have 5 leaves and also 5 trunks. This is why they're considered good luck and supposed to bring you good fortune, like money. Now this plant is going to need bright light, so make sure that you're giving it a nice wide view of the sky. All right, that's super important. And then for watering, during the spring and summer months, that's when it's actively growing. You can let it dry out about 25% between watering. In the wintertime, they go dormant, and you can water them when they're about 50% dry. Now these plants are much better drying out than they are being watered, so if you're unsure, just wait for them to be more dry. You can repot this plant when roots start coming out of the bottom drainage holes, and I use a 1:1 ratio of houseplant soil mixed with cactus soil. You can fertilize this plant with a general purpose fertilizer throughout the spring and summer months.
Monstera Deliciosa care. These like bright and direct light. That means the plant can see the light, they can't directly feel the light. Ours is in an east window. These plants are climbers, so make sure to give it some support. As for soil, we use a chunky, well-draining mix, and we water when the soil is completely dry. And now that it's spring, we'll get more into fertilizing soon. You may know the lobes on Monstera leaves as fenestrations, but did you know the holes in the center have a different name called perforations? Monstera leaves start out heart-shaped and develop more fenestrations and perforations as they mature. To encourage maturity, give lots of stability and light.
Alright, plant people, I found these bulbs at Whole Foods and you know I couldn't resist. Let's grow some elephant ear colocasia from scratch. Fuck instructions, I just potted these guys up in some soil and we're gonna see what happens. I have high hopes for this guy because she was already sprouting. I cannot say the same for the next bitch, but we're gonna pot her up anyway. I covered them all with lots of soil, put them in a bright spot, gave them lots and lots of water, and look what I had a week later. And then a week after that, she was literally ready to unfurl. I couldn't even wait to show you guys. I already have a spot set up for her right next to my bed and I'll update you guys when she opened.
Hey everyone! So a lot of you were asking, first of all, what is this plant and how to care for it? So this is the Oxalis Triangularis, or also known as the purple shamrock. Obviously my plant is very full and pretty happy, so here are some care tips. In my opinion, these are really easy to care for. The reason for that is that these are very expressive plants, so it kind of can tell you if something's not right by, like, if they're opened or closed. So up here you can see this one is opening because it wants more sunlight. This one down here is closed. So at nighttime, all of the leaves close up like this, which is really cool. This does like a lot of sunlight though, so I keep it in front of a pretty bright window and it seems really happy there. In terms of water, I water it more often than I do with most of my plants because when it's thirsty, this plant likes to look like it's dying. For example, this is what she looked like one time when she was thirsty. Look at her pretty flowers!
Welcome back to Plant of the Week. This one has been long awaited. Here's how to take care of your money tree. These guys like bright to medium indirect light, so I do like to keep them pretty close to windows, and I like to let them dry out about 50% between watering. But they love a thorough water, so make sure that water's coming out of the drainage holes. You can cluster, use a humidifier or mist to add a tiny bit of humidity. And best of all, they're non-toxic for pets.
Hi plant friends. People are always asking me for easy houseplant recommendations. So I'm going to give you some recommendations, but disclaimer, if you tend to overcare for your plants, like overwater them, these might not be for you. First up, Syndoniums. These guys will let you know when they need water, and they grow constantly. There's so many different kinds. We knew it was coming. Rabbit's foot fern. More often than not, when people are messaging me with issues, they're usually overwatering it, so this guy can dry out. Everybody needs some Sansevieria or snake plant. I love my moonshine, but I think whale fins are so fun. They don't do much, you just set it in a corner and forget about it. I personally love them. In these types of videos, people often recommend ZZ plant, but I personally like Zenzi's better. I never see them around me, so I don't have one. She's a little different if you don't like the normal ZZs. The philodendron I can always neglect and it'll bounce back is my Brazil. Ratio of light green to dark will vary depending on how much light you're giving it. Another philodendron of mine that stood the test of time is my Prince of Orange. It's actually absurd how thirsty I let this thing get before watering it, and she never stops growing. And I personally think everyone should have a cool cactus. No plant of mine gets forgotten about more than this one.
Welcome to Propagation 101, aka how to turn one of your plants into a whole bunch of your plants. Today I'm going to show you how to take a cutting off a plant with clear nodes. First things first, what the fuck is a node? To find a node, we want to look for bumps in the stem. It's usually where the leaf sprouts out and is going to be our strongest growth point, so we want to make sure we grab one in the cutting. Take a healthy section of plant, find that node, and cut an inch above and an inch below it. And that's literally all you have to do to have cuttings that'll root. Stick them in a clean glass of water and give those babies some light. And before you know, you'll have a rooted plant that you can pot up in soil.
Hey plant peeps! Now I know a lot of you fuss over your cuttings and how to take care of them. I just wanted to show you how large-scale production happens here and how they take care of their cuttings. So cuttings here aren't even placed in soil. They're actually just in seed flats and left out. No watering, no fussing, but look at that healthy root growth. And some things are just left out. I know this looks like it's really close to death, but I promise you, these will grow. The only thing they really did do is have all the cuttings face towards the light so they're not stretching. And look what's below. That's crazy. And it pretty much doesn't matter the variety. They're all taken care of the same way. Now we are in a greenhouse and it is covered. No full sun for these guys, otherwise they will burn. So don't be afraid of cuttings. It's a great way to get your collection to grow. I'm just gonna need this right here.